The sun had already scorched the earth by mid-morning, turning the dirt roads into ribbons of dust. Eli Morgan pulled his battered hat lower over his brow as the auctioneer barked out numbers like he was selling cattle, not children. Next up. Strong back, no known sickness. 12 years old. Doesn't talk much, don't need to. What she lacks in words, she makes up in grit. Eli wasn't there to buy a soul. He'd come into town for supplies, rope, flour, maybe a little hope if it was still in stock. But something in the auctioneer's tone, a casual cruelty, a strip of shame hidden behind bravado, made Eli stop. A small girl stepped onto the block. Barefoot, with tangled hair the color of river clay and a long braid that looked like it had been self-tied 100 times. Her shirt was too big, her skirt torn. She didn't cry, didn't tremble. She just looked out over the crowd like none of it could touch her, eyes like storm clouds. Old eyes. Eli felt a gut twist he hadn't felt since the war. Do I hear $10? A man in a waistcoat with tobacco-stained teeth shouted, 10. 15, Eli said before he realized he was speaking. The crowd turned. Eli Morgan hadn't bought a thing in years, not since his wife passed and the drought made his ranch more ghost town than homestead. 20. The waistcoat man snapped. 25, Eli said louder, jaw tight. The auctioneer smiled. We got ourselves a bidding war. 30. The waistcoat man hesitated. Then spat on the ground. Ain't worth it. That girl's cursed. Sold. To Mr. Eli Morgan. The gavel cracked like thunder. The girl didn't flinch. They rode back in silence, the girl sitting behind Eli on his old Mustang. She didn't ask where they were going. She didn't ask anything. Eli cleared his throat. Name? Nothing. You got one, right? Still nothing, he sighed. I'll call you Clara, then. That all right? She didn't nod. Didn't shake her head. Just stared at the horizon like it might give her back something she'd lost. The ranch came into view at dusk, fields like bone, fences half-eaten by time, and a barn that leaned west like it was tired of standing. Eli helped her down. This is where we work, he said. Ain't much. Used to be better. Still no response. You'll sleep in the loft. Got a cot up there. We eat at dawn and sunset. Work in between. That suit you? Clara finally looked at him, really looked. Not with fear, but with something closer to defiance. I ain't nobody's slave, she said, voice like wind over broken glass. Eli blinked. It was the first time he'd heard her speak. You ain't, he replied quietly. But you do your part, same as me. She stared at him a moment longer. Then climbed the ladder to the loft without another word. Morning came with heat already rising off the earth. Eli found Clara outside, trying to pump water from the well. It groaned with effort but gave none. Dried up, he said, taking the handle. We haul from the creek now. 2 miles. Takes a strong back and stronger will. She rolled up her sleeves and grabbed a bucket. They walked side by side in silence. The road to the creek wound through old oaks and past the remains of cabins long forgotten. Clara didn't complain. She didn't tire. She carried water like she'd done it 100 times. By the end of the day, she had hauled water, fed the chickens, gathered eggs, and even repaired part of the sagging fence with nothing but twine and a rock. You ever fix fencing before? Eli asked. No, how'd you know how? Watched. Eli nodded. Smart girl. She looked at him sideways. Ain't what the others said. He let that sit between them a while. Others ain't here now, he said. That night, Eli sat by the fireplace, nursing a tin of beans. Clara sat across from him, wrapped in an old wool blanket. Her face was smudged with dirt and her braid looser than before. You got people? He asked. She didn't answer at first. My ma died 2 winters ago, she said finally. Pa sold me to settle a debt. Eli's jaw tensed. I'm sorry. Clara's eyes flashed. You paid for me, didn't you? Just like him. He stared into the fire. I paid to keep you from men worse than me. That seemed to surprise her. You ever lose someone? She asked. Eli nodded slowly. Wife. Daughter. A long time back. Clara didn't say she was sorry. She just looked at the fire like maybe she understood something about him now. Before bed, she stood in the doorway of the barn and looked out across the plains. The stars blinked into life, soft and shy. Why'd you name me Clara? She asked. Eli didn't look up from where he was oiling a lantern. It was my daughter's name, he said. She didn't answer, just stood there, her silhouette sharp against the darkening sky. Then, like it took everything in her, she whispered, all right then. Clara'll do. Clara worked like she was born for it. At dawn, she was already out by the coop, scattering feed. By mid-morning, she'd scrubbed the rust off the pump handle and coaxed 2 good buckets of water from it. She didn't wait for orders. Just watched Eli, mimicked his movements, and filled in the gaps before he even asked. Eli noticed, but he said nothing. Compliments were like gold, rare, hard-earned, and too heavy to toss around carelessly, but something was changing. She hummed sometimes, softly, under her breath, while sweeping the barn or kneeling in the vegetable patch. Eli didn't recognize the tune, but it stuck with him like a ghost melody from a life he couldn't get back. That night, over boiled potatoes and stale bread, Eli cleared his throat. You learned to do all this work from your pa? Clara shook her head. From folks who made me earn my food. He grunted. You read? She hesitated. A little. Right? A little more. Eli chewed slowly. Huh. That was all he said, but Clara caught the twitch at the corner of his mouth. Almost a smile. Almost. The air turned dry and sharp over the next few days. A wind blew down from the north, hot, restless, like it carried trouble in its fists. Eli watched the skies as if expecting them to split open. Clara noticed. Bad weather? He squinted toward the horizon. Maybe worse. By noon, the clouds were orange. Not from rain, but smoke, fire, Eli muttered. He grabbed the shovel and raced to the edge of the field. Clara followed, close behind. The grass crackled underfoot. Ash drifted through the air like dirty snow. Across the canyon, a wall of flames climbed the ridge, eating everything in its path. Trees exploded in the distance. Birds fled in mad flocks. Help me with the trough. He barked, urgency cracking his voice like a whip. Together, they dragged water to the barn, doused the roof, shoveled dirt into buckets. Eli moved like a man possessed, and Clara didn't falter, not once. As the fire closed in, Eli ran to unbar the gate to the animals. The horses refused to move at first, panicked by the smell of smoke. Clara, eyes wide with fear, stepped in front of one, grabbed its halter, and whispered something Eli couldn't hear. The mare calmed. She led it into the open and slapped its flank. It bolted. She did the same with the rest, chickens, goats, the old mule. The fire didn't cross the canyon, but it licked the edges like a threat. By dusk, everything was covered in ash. But the barn still stood. They sat on overturned buckets outside the smoldering field, lungs full of smoke, faces streaked with soot. Eli stared at her, chest heaving. You all right? Clara nodded slowly. You. I've seen worse, he said. Then paused. You were brave. She didn't answer. Just looked at the blackened ridge. I thought I was gonna die, she said finally, her voice small. Eli wiped his face with a rag. We all do. Every time something big comes. That's how you know you're still living. The next morning, Eli found her sitting in the barn with a charred bird cradled in her hands. Its wing was burned, but it was breathing. You're wasting time, he said, but without bite. Clara didn't look up. If it were me, I'd want someone to try. He said nothing, just watched her. A few minutes later, he brought a shoebox lined with a rag and set it beside her. For the bird, he said. Put it near the hearth. Might help. Clara looked at him, really looked. That old defiance softened into something new. Thank you, she said. Eli just grunted and walked away, but behind his eyes, something stirred. A crack in the wall, that night, as the wind cooled and the sky cleared. Clara came down from the loft holding a small leather book. She held it out. Can you read? Eli stared at it. It was a journal, handwritten, faded, the leather nearly falling apart. I used to, he muttered. Not much anymore. Clara opened it and read aloud, September 3rd. Still no rain. Papa says the creek's down another inch. Mama says we'll manage. I believe her. She looked up. My mother's. Eli's throat tightened. You kept it all this time? She nodded. Even when I didn't have shoes. He reached for the book but stopped. You mind reading more? Clara smiled, just a little. Okay. She read until the oil lamp sputtered low. Pages about growing squash, about cold mornings. About a girl who still believed the world could be kind. Later, after she'd gone back up to the loft, Eli sat by the fire, her mother's journal on his lap. He hadn't touched another's words in years. He reached into the old box by the hearth and pulled out a bundle of letters. Tied in twine, edges worn thin, he hadn't opened them in years. They were from his daughter, still sealed. He held them in his hands for a long time, staring at the handwriting that once filled his world. Finally, he whispered to no one, maybe it's time. And he placed them on the table, right next to Clara's book. The morning after the fire, the sky was too blue, like the world had forgotten what had just happened. Clara sat by the creek, barefoot in the mud, her skirt hitched above her knees. The bird had survived the night, nestled in the shoebox near the hearth. She named it Ember. Eli watched her from a distance. She'd changed. Not just the dirt under her nails or the way her muscles moved with quiet strength, but her eyes. Still stormy, but not hollow. Like someone had lit a lantern behind them. When she came back up the trail, she saw the letters on the table. Her mother's journal was beside them. She paused. Yours? Eli nodded. From my daughter. Clara moved slowly, as if not wanting to break the spell. You gonna read them? I think I need to. He untied the twine. His hands trembled. The first envelope was dated 8 years ago. He unfolded the letter. Dear Pa, Mama said I shouldn't write, but I had to. I know you're hurting. We all are. But you don't have to carry it alone. Please come see us. I made jam like you used to. Love, Clara. Eli stared at the words as if they were nails driven into his chest. Clara, the name wasn't a coincidence. He'd given her the name on instinct. Muscle memory. But now, he looked up at the girl standing across from him, her hair braided like his wife used to do for their child. You look like her, he whispered. Clara frowned. Like who? He swallowed hard. My daughter. The one I lost. There was silence between them. Heavy. Raw. She died? Clara asked. Eli shook his head slowly. She left. Why? Because I sent her away. He turned toward the fire, ashamed. My wife died. I couldn't breathe, couldn't sleep. I pushed people out. I thought. If I cut the pain out, I'd heal faster. But all I did was bleed slower. Clara said nothing. Just sat beside him. He handed her the letter. She read it again, lips moving. After a long moment, she said softly, you should write back. Eli gave a dry, bitter laugh. It's too late. No, Clara said. If someone wrote me, I'd want to know they still remembered. Later that day, Clara brought in the last of the eggs and found Eli sitting with pen and paper. He scratched slowly, deliberately. His hand shook, but the words came anyway. Clara, I don't know where to begin, but I want you to know I kept every letter. I was too proud to read them then. I was a fool. I named a little girl after you. She's strong. Brave. And she's showing me how to live again. He stopped there, didn't sign it, didn't seal it, just left it on the table. Clara read it once. Twice, then, without a word, she folded it carefully and slid it into one of the empty envelopes. Tomorrow, she said, we'll ride to town. Find a post. Eli looked at her. You sure? She nodded. I think you both need it. They rode at dawn, through golden fields and scorched earth. Clara clutched the letter in her fist. In town, they dismounted near the post office. People watched them, especially Clara, who didn't look like she belonged to anyone. The clerk eyed them warily. Can I help you? Eli stepped forward. I need to send this. Clara Morgan. No return address. Just send it. The clerk looked confused, but nodded. As they turned to leave, someone called out from across the street. Well, I'll be damned. Look who it is, Eli Morgan. Thought the planes had swallowed you whole. It was Daniel Croft, the man who once tried to outbid him for Clara. He tipped his hat toward her. Little girl still working out that debt. Eli stepped in front of Clara, eyes cold. She's not a debt. She's a person. Croft sneered. You keep telling yourself that. Eli's fists tightened. Clara stepped forward. You didn't win. Croft blinked. What? You didn't win, she said again, louder. You tried to buy me. But I'm not for sale. People stopped to look. Murmurs followed. Croft turned red, spat, and walked away. Eli looked at her. You didn't have to say anything. Yes, I did, she replied. I've been silent too long. That night, back at the ranch, they lit a fire and shared a stew made of what little they had: onions, beans, a scrap of salt pork. Clara reached into her pocket and pulled out a small photograph. It was old and bent, but the image was clear. Her mother, smiling, holding a baby. Me, Clara said. Eli held it gently. She looks kind. She was. He gave it back. I hope I'm doing right by you. Clara looked at the fire. You are now. In the silence that followed, a spark jumped from the flames and disappeared into the night. The prairie beyond them swayed with a soft wind. Eli turned to Clara. We got land. We got time. Maybe it's not too late to grow something again. Clara smiled faintly. Not too late. They sat like that until the stars came out, not speaking, just two souls, stitched together by fire, silence, and the long, hard road of redemption. Spring came slow and stubborn that year. Like a tired traveler dragging its feet, the land was scarred. Black lines where the fire had raked its claws. The barn still stood, but the fence line had collapsed in places, and the vegetable patch was more ash than earth. But Eli had tools. Clara had fire. Together, they had just enough hope to start again. They began with the garden. Clara knelt beside the soil, scraping away the dead crust. Nothing will grow here. Eli crouched beside her, running the dirt through his fingers. Not yet. But it will. How do you know? He looked toward the horizon. Because this land's like us. Burned, but not broken. Clara stared at the dirt. Unsure if she believed him, but still, she dug. They cleared the patch inch by inch, turning the soil, mixing it with manure and ashes, adding bits of crushed bone from the cookpot. Eli explained that even death had its use. That nothing truly ended, it just changed shape. That night, they planted their first seeds, not many. Just carrots, onions, and a few stubborn beans Clara found in a drawer. She named each row, strength. Patience. Second chances. Eli raised an eyebrow. Second chances. Clara smiled. For us. For everything. Each morning, Clara checked the patch before breakfast. She spoke to the soil, like her mother once did. Eli watched her from the porch, sipping weak coffee. She's talking to dirt now, he muttered. Lord help me. But secretly, he hoped the dirt was listening. When the rains finally came, they came hard. Thunder rolled across the plains like a cavalry charge. The wind howled against the shutters. But Eli's roof held. His barn held. And the patch, now softened by the storm, drank deep. In the morning, Clara burst through the door, soaked but grinning. They sprouted. She yelled. He followed her outside. Sure enough, tiny green shoots pushed up through the blackened earth like brave little soldiers. Clara knelt, brushing the soil gently with her fingers. Eli said nothing. Instead, he walked to the shed, pulled out 2 lengths of wood, and began building a new fence. Later that week, they went to market. The old wagon creaked the whole way into town, and the mule refused to move without Clara at its side, whispering to it like a sister. They sold eggs, a few jars of pickled onions, and 2 loaves of Clara's first ever bread. It was too dense, a little salty, but folks bought it anyway, drawn by her fierce eyes and dirt-stained hands. On the way home, Eli handed her the coins. "You earned it." She looked at the small handful of silver. "I don't know what to do with money." "Good. That means you won't waste it." She nodded. Maybe we can buy a paintbrush." He looked at her sideways. "A what?" "For me. I used to paint. A long time ago." He didn't laugh. Just nodded. "Next trip." That evening, Clara dug through her satchel and pulled out a bundle of folded papers. She unwrapped them slowly, reverently. Paintings. Or what was left of them. One was of a tree under a blood-red sky. Another, a girl with wild hair and empty eyes. She spread them on the table. Eli stared. "You did these?" Clara nodded. Before I forgot who I was." He pointed to the one of the girl. "She looks angry." She was. He looked at Clara. "She still?" Clara paused. "Not as much." In the weeks that followed, the ranch transformed. The garden bloomed. The fences stood tall. Clara painted on scraps of wood and the barn door itself. Sunsets, prairie dogs, a silhouette of a little girl beside a towering man under a cottonwood tree. Locals started noticing. People came by, just to talk, or trade, or ask about the girl who painted fire like it was alive. Eli didn't say much, but he kept an extra stool on the porch, just in case someone stops by. He muttered. One day, a letter came. Eli opened it slowly, unsure if he was ready. "Pa, I got your note," I cried when I read it. "I didn't know if you'd ever write again. I'm in Kansas now. Married. 1 child. His name's Matthew. I tell him stories about the plains. About you, if you ever want to meet him. We're here." Eli folded the letter and looked at Clara. "I think I need to go see her." Clara blinked. "Will you come back?" Eli nodded. "This is home." She smiled. "Then go." He packed a small bag. Clara gave him a jar of pickled onions and a painting, her favorite, of the sunrise over their garden. For her, she said. He was gone 4 days. Clara kept the ranch running, fed the mule, patched the roof, hauled water from the creek, but she missed him. Not because she needed help, but because the silence felt heavier without him. On the 5th morning, she heard the wagon wheels crunch down the trail. He stepped off slowly, no words, just a nod, but his eyes were red, and his arms were full, holding a small wooden box and a sketchbook with a child's messy crayon scribbles. "He drew you," Eli said, handing her the book. "Said you look like a warrior." Clara flipped through the pages, smiling. Inside the box, a new set of paints, and a brush, wrapped in soft cloth. That night, Clara painted until the stars came out. Not fire this time, but dawn, a bright, wild, stubborn kind of light. She gave it to Eli, and signed. He hung it in the barn, right over the doorway. "I think we're almost whole," he said. She didn't answer. Just stood beside him, watching the wind bend the prairie grass like waves. The sun returned to the plains with fire in its veins. June brought thick heat that made the earth crack. the kind that sucked moisture from your bones. But the garden, Clara's garden, flourished. Carrots like golden fingers. Onions fat and fragrant. Beans twisting skyward like they wanted to touch heaven. Each day, Clara rose with the sun. She braided her hair in 2 neat ropes, tied with twine, and walked the rows barefoot, whispering to the leaves. The land listened. Eli watched her from the porch. He still didn't understand the way she communed with dirt and sky, but he no longer questioned it. She belonged here. One evening, a wagon pulled up the trail. It wasn't the mailman or the neighbors. It was a woman, tall, sun-wrinkled, with boots too clean to be local and eyes that didn't blink. Clara stepped off the porch slowly, wiping her hands on her apron. "You Clara?" the woman asked. She nodded, cautious. The woman reached into her bag and pulled out a yellowed paper. It was a poster, Clara's face. "Younger. Dirty. Afraid, been looking for you a long time," the woman said. "Name's Sheriff Harlow. I don't arrest girls. I rescue them." Clara's breath caught. "I'm not lost." Harlow scanned the house, the garden, the man on the porch. "No," she agreed. "You're found." They sat at the table while the stew cooked, the sheriff's eyes drifting over the paintings on the wall. "You were taken when you were 10, she said. "Vanished off the road to Dry Hollow. Folks thought you died. But some of us never stopped looking." Clara stared at her bowl. "I wasn't taken. I ran." Harlow blinked. "Why?" Clara's jaw clenched. "Because my stepfather hit me. Because no one believed me. Because my mother looked away." The silence was thick. Eli stared at the flame in the hearth. "I found her at a rail auction," he said. "Paid $5. That's the truth of it." The sheriff looked between them. "And now?" "Now she's free," he said. Clara nodded. "I stayed because I chose to." Harlow sighed. "You want me to take you somewhere safe? A place for girls like you?" Clara met her eyes. Steady. Calm. "I already live there." The sheriff left at dawn, but not before promising to erase the bounty and burn the old poster. She tipped her hat, then paused at the gate. "You ever want to testify, Clara, I'll be there." Clara nodded. "I'll think about it." Then she turned back to the soil, where the beans were blooming. That summer, Eli built her a studio. It wasn't much, just 1 room, a slanted roof, and a big window facing east. But it was hers. She painted every day. Birds, horses, prairie fires, and skies that bled pink and gold. People came from neighboring towns to see. To buy, to learn. One woman offered her $20 for a piece. Clara cried when she handed it over. "It's just color and wood," she whispered. "No," Eli said. "It's your voice." One evening, while they sat shelling peas, Eli cleared his throat. "I want to change the deed," he said. Clara looked up. "What?" "I want to put your name on it. The land. The house. The garden." Clara blinked fast. "But I'm not." "You are," he interrupted. "Your family. Maybe not by blood. But by fire. And that holds deeper." Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. The next morning, he took her into town, where the clerk had to re-ink the ledger because his hands shook so badly. He signed first. Then her, Clara Morgan, owner. That week, they received a letter from Kansas. "Dear Pa, thank you for the painting. Matthew won't stop staring at it. We're coming in July. Just a few days. I want him to see where I grew up. I want him to meet her. Love, Rose." Clara sat with the letter for hours. "She wants to meet me?" she asked. Eli nodded. "But why?" He smiled. "Because she's my daughter. And now your family, too." On the first day of July, a carriage pulled up the trail. Clara stood on the porch in a blue dress, her hands clenched so tight her knuckles went white. A woman stepped out. Not young. Not old. Her face was Eli's in female form. Behind her, a boy, maybe 7, climbed down, eyes wide as the prairie. "Papa." Rose called. Eli walked to her. They held each other like lifelines, both crying in that quiet, embarrassed way families do when they've waited too long. Then Rose turned to Clara. "You're the one who kept him alive." Clara shook her head. "He saved me." They hugged. No more words. That night, they lit a fire under the stars. Matthew ran in circles with the dog, chasing fireflies. Clara played the fiddle. Eli watched the sky. Rose looked around, smiled, and said, "This place is healing." Eli nodded. "It's her doing." Clara looked into the flames. "No," she whispered. "It was both of us." Autumn came gently. No fire, no windstorms, no disasters, just golden leaves, ripened corn, and skies that stretched forever. Clara stood at the edge of the garden, a basket on her hip, watching the land change one last time before winter. It no longer looked like the place she had first crawled into. The soil had healed. So had she. Eli spent more time sitting than working these days. His joints ached. His breathing was slower. Clara noticed how long it took him to get up from the porch, how often he stared at the same patch of sky like he was remembering something. One morning, she brought him coffee. He didn't take it. "I think," he said, "I'd like to see the ocean." Clara blinked. "What?" He smiled. "Always wanted to. Heard it's loud and endless. Like thunder you can touch." She sat beside him. "Then we'll go." He looked at her. "It's a long ride. You don't have to." She touched his hand. "You're not doing it alone." They left the ranch in October, left it in the care of a neighbor boy who'd always admired Clara's garden. The wagon was loaded with a quilt, jars of jam, 2 paintbrushes, and a folded letter from Rose, wishing them safe travels. They traveled slow, through Kansas wheat fields, across the Ozarks, down long winding roads where trees turned red and orange. Clara sketched the journey as they went, faces of strangers, crooked towns, a river that looked like liquid glass. Eli told stories. About his first horse. About a storm that carried a cow 2 miles. About the time he got lost in the woods for 3 days and survived on dandelions and sassafras. Clara laughed. She hadn't laughed like that in years. They reached the sea in late November. It was wilder than Clara imagined. Waves slammed into rocks like the world was cracking open. The air was sharp and salted. Birds screamed overhead. Eli stood at the edge of the beach, boots sinking into the sand, arms crossed. He said nothing for a long time. Then, "I wish I'd seen this with her." Clara stood beside him. "You're seeing it now. For both of you." He nodded. The wind caught his hat and flung it into the water. He didn't chase it, just smiled. They stayed in a small house overlooking the shore. Clara painted every morning, capturing the ocean in shades of blue, gray, and fury. Eli sat by the window, reading letters from Rose, watching the gulls. One morning, Clara woke to find him still in his chair, eyes closed, at peace. The coffee had gone cold in his cup. The funeral was simple. Clara wore black, but painted a seashell on the pine box lid, blue and gold, with a single line of green grass curling through the waves. She buried him near a dune, with a stone that read, "Elijah Morgan, burned, but not broken. He planted hope where none should grow." She returned to the ranch alone. The house waited quietly, dust floating like ghosts in the light. The garden had gone to seed, but the soil still breathed. Clara unpacked her sketchbooks. Hung new paintings on the walls. In the barn, she found Eli's old coat and hung it beside her own. For weeks, she didn't speak much, but the land understood. Spring came again. Children from the neighboring town came to learn painting. Mothers brought seeds to trade. Old men came just to talk to someone who knew silence better than most. Clara opened a school in the barn. She called it Ash's Roots, on the sign. She painted a girl standing on blackened earth. Beneath her feet, green shoots curling skyward. One day, a teenage girl wandered up the road, tattered dress. Quiet eyes. Arms wrapped around herself like a shield, Clara saw the signs right away. She invited her in for bread and tea. The girl didn't speak for 3 days. Then, suddenly, "Are you the lady who used to be owned?" Clara nodded. The girl looked at her. "And now you own land?" "Yes." "And people come here to paint?" "They come here to heal." The girl wiped her nose on her sleeve. "I don't want to be afraid anymore." Clara reached for her hand. "You're already halfway there." That summer, Clara painted her biggest canvas yet. It showed a prairie in flames, fierce and wild, but in the center, untouched, stood a girl with her arms outstretched. Behind her, an old man, smiling with his hat in his hand. Beneath the painting, she scrawled the title, "The Fire Doesn't Win." By autumn, her name spread beyond the county. A reporter came. Wrote an article called "The Girl Who Rose from Ash." She was invited to speak in the city. Offered a gallery. Even asked to publish a book. But she turned them all down. "I've already told my story," she said, "it's written in the soil." Years later, on a warm September evening, Clara sat on the porch beside a new girl, young, strong, still learning. The wind carried the scent of tomato vines and wild grass. The sun dipped low. Clara closed her eyes. She could still hear Eli's voice in the breeze, still feel the rhythm of the land, still believe that even the burned can bloom again.